If you've ever planted a huge garden, worked non-stop, and still felt disappointed at the end of the season, then this video is for you. Because I've done square foot gardening, I've done row gardening, I've done permaculture and chaos gardening. And honestly, what finally changed everything wasn't another method, it was just growing intentionally. Today I want to walk you through the most common ways people grow food, what works, what doesn't, and why I now use something called intentional growing and how it's completely changed our homestead. Before we can carry on with the day, we need to do freshwater, food, and then trip over some birds. Let's quickly show you what is going on here. So we've got a water bowl inside the chicken coop. Then we've got this water container that we have to clean out often. And then I just have a random one there. We also got bunnies around in this area, so we need to make sure that the bunnies can get water. I do have another bowl on the other side where the rabbit hutch is. I'm going to quickly clean all the water stations and then top up their food and then carry on with the rest of our day. When most of us start gardening, we're just excited to grow anything. I know this because I was one of them. We buy the plants, we buy the seeds, we hope for the best. And sometimes it works, but often it leads to burnt out, overwhelmed, wasted food, and frustration. Over the years, I realized something important. The problem wasn't my effort. The problem was the lack of intention behind the garden. So let's talk about the most common growing methods, and then I'll show you how intentional growing pulls the best parts of each one without the chaos. Row gardening is fantastic if you are farming acres or using machinery. It's simple, it's familiar, and it scales well. But on a homestead or a backyard scale, it can become inefficient. So you get to use loads of unwanted space. There is soil compaction from walking, harder to manage weeds, and I've had entire rows of vegetables bolt, rot, or go unharvested. Not because they failed, but because I didn't need that much. So if there's one thing you can take away from this method is row gardening grows food. Intentional growing grows the right amount of food. So let's talk about row gardening. Row gardening is fantastic if you are a farmer because you get to grow a whole bunch of crops and harvest. It is, to me, a perfect thing if you've got a huge piece of land and machinery to help you. But with a small scale homestead like I have, I found that I was basically growing too much. I was not attending to my crops because it had grown so much weed that it became so overwhelming. And when I did get to harvest, I just had way too much. As a beginner, you need to learn to first learn your soil, how to grow, and when you've learned to master that, then step to the next level, which is how to preserve. Then you can maybe go and grow more than you wanted to, but knowing that when you do harvest it and you have an abundance, you can preserve it. So in my first year of growing cucumbers, for example, I only did 2 plants, and that was more than enough. This season, I have probably 10 cucumber plants plus 3 in the bed in front of me. So I've got about 13 cucumber plants. What am I going to do with an abundance of cucumbers? Well, first thing is I'll be using it for salads and that. So it is summer in South Africa, and cucumbers are really nice in summer foods. So they're going in foods. I like to just eat them raw like that. We do have animals that like cucumbers that are allowed cucumbers. And then also, because I have so many cucumbers, we will be pickling our cucumbers this season, because I did it last year. I didn't have enough cucumbers. I was only able to do 1 jar of cucumbers, and making gherkins is fantastic, and making pickled cucumbers, it's kind of like 2 different things. Pickled cucumbers, you would think it's gherkins, but it is preserved differently, what I've been told and taught. So we will be doing a video on that when we get to harvest our cucumbers. But that is where I recommend you guys start, is getting to learn to know your soil, how you want to plant in your garden, it be in pots, raised beds, in the ground, and then a few crops. Then from there you can go mad if you want to, like I am right now. Next is square foot gardening, and this is where things really start to shift. So it is basically using your raised beds, and this gets divided into squares, 1 by 1 squares. Each square has a specific crop that you grow in that square. So it could be maybe 1 square is 2 pepper plants, in another square it would be radishes, and radish you can plant about, I think they said about 20 radish in 1 square. So you don't need so much spacing for a radish to grow, so your spacing is small, so you can get quite a lot in that square. And then maybe another square, 1 or 2 lettuce or 4 lettuce. What I love about this method is that it teaches you a way to grow. It is clean, and to me it's still a system though, but I do recommend a beginner to start with this kind of system, because it teaches you a lot, and it taught me a lot in using this method in my 3rd year of homesteading. And it was awesome to learn the method. I loved the method, but to me this was still a system, and that is where intention comes in. So now let's talk about our 3rd method, which is about permaculture and natural style gardening. So basically this is mimicking nature, and it's got a lot to do with companion planting, especially with perennials. So I love permaculture principles, observations, soil health, working with nature instead of fighting it. But where people struggle is permaculture can become overwhelming. In the long term, it pays off, but to me it was hard to visualize, and it can feel chaotic without experience. So I've seen people plant everything everywhere and then not know how to manage it. And for me, it was very easy to overplant. If you want to take anything away from this, is that nature is intentional, but humans still need a plan. Okay, the next one is called chaos gardening. This is basically no plan gardening. I did it a lot in my very early days, where you just plant whatever you want in all your raised beds, not knowing what the result was going to be, and that's where chaos starts. It is fun, it's experimental, it is low pressure, And the only thing I found with doing it that way is that when it came to harvest, I was all over the place, and at the end of the day it became a little bit overwhelming for me. But that is the latest trend right now, is people not knowing how to start a small little homestead and doing gardening, chaotic gardening system. And the only thing with this is that there is disadvantages. So chaos gardening works best if food production is not your main goal. So if it's just for fun and experimenting, this is the way to go then. After years of trying every method, I realized something. The best gardens aren't built on rules, they're built on purpose. Intentional growing means every plant has a reason. You may ask yourself things like, why am I growing this? How much do we actually use? Where does this make sense? And what comes after it? Intentional growing borrows from every method, but filters everything through real life. So the 5 core principles of intentional growing is: grow what you eat. Not what looks good online, not what everyone else is growing, but what do you eat every week? Number 2, right plant, right place. What does this mean? It means high use crops near the house, low maintenance crops further away. We have our herbs closer to the kitchen door, and we have things like corn and melons and that further away from the house. So number 3 is purposeful spacing. Some plants need room. Some can be packed tight, so lettuce can be spaced tighter than things like brinjals and tomato plants, which they need space for. Number 4 is succession with intention. And what goes in after your harvest? So empty soil is a missed opportunity. And now that I have some open spaces, I'm going to be filling them up and even sprinkling some seeds so they can start germinating. Number 5 is energy insufficiency. The garden should always serve your life, not exhaust it. And if it's too hard to maintain, it's not sustainable. So instead of saying to myself, I have 10 to 14 raised beds, what shall I do? I'm now saying to myself, I need a raised bed for experimental stuff. I need a raised bed for salad. I need a raised bed for things like preserving. I need a raised bed for the animals, their food. I need a raised bed for berries. I need a raised bed for corn. What can grow with corn? Let's see. Things that can creep up the stalk. Things like melons and beans and that. Your squash. So try the 3-sister method in your raised bed with your corn. And that is how I'm thinking these days. I am now making sure that every single raised bed that I have is planted with intention. Intentional growing isn't about perfection. It's about honesty with your space, your time, and your energy. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by gardening, maybe you don't need a new method. Maybe you just need a clearer why. If this video helped you, let me know in the comments what's the one thing you're growing this year on purpose. And if you want more real-life homesteading conversations like this, don't forget to subscribe. And take a look at this video. You definitely will enjoy it. I'll meet you there.